Hey everybody, my name is Jay and this is I Have a Samurai. Today we're going to be looking at the matchup of Amy versus Nightmare. This is a handful of games early on in a set of a very, very long set that I had with Dre a few days ago. So he's going to be the Nightmare on the right, I'm going to be the Amy on the left. I find this to be a very interesting matchup in the sense of both characters can be very annoying on each other for different reasons. The main thing that Amy has against Nightmare is obviously speed, but also the fact that Nightmare doesn't have an I-12 Punisher means that in situations where normally Amy has to come up with like a parry or a reverse mix-up to deal with something, she doesn't have to do that against Nightmare. Nightmare's the only character where I can just get in virtually whenever I want to with moves that put me at minus 12, which isn't that big of a deal. And so it's a constant amount of pressure that you're able to put on Nightmare. Now, that being said, Nightmare has armor for any of her like non-low attacks. That aren't break attacks, so that can really stop any of your kind of pressure. And for two, Nightmare is one of the better characters in the game at punishing Amy's unsafe lows, her unseeable lows on block. So suddenly your mix-up game kind of goes out the window a little bit because you'll just lose out on damage. And so, it's not just the fact that Amy definitely has speed on Nightmare and Nightmare definitely has damage on Amy. They both also have different tools that make the matchup harder for each other as well. So I find it to be a very unique way that you have to play the matchup. So right there, right off the bat, you can tell one of the main things. I think I talked about this in my previous video. With 6-6A on block, it puts you at minus 12, and so you have to do a parry for, cancel into a parry in order to try and deal with the punish that's going to happen. Nightmare doesn't have an I-12 move. So doing 6-6A on block and canceling into a parry is actually bad against Nightmare because the parry is only going to work against something that's going to be 12. So you use 6-6A in a different way. You don't try to like get in and then try to go for a mix-up. You get in and that's it. It's a guaranteed get in, and you just take solace with the fact that it's just virtually a guaranteed get in. Using like the tech crouch off of that kind of thing can be really worth it against Nightmare. And you can tell Dre's not even trying to like feign like a punish. He's just immediately going for guard damage, which makes sense. So you see here, he's using a little bit more of his range to get away from stuff, and I'm using my tech crouches just like I did there in order to try and get in and deal with his spacing, because most of his moves that he's going to want to do to keep me out are going to be highs. That was a really good challenge there. Not a lot of people are doing that off of 6BB, 6, and then I start pressing buttons. Plus the fact that Nightmare has armor means that he doesn't necessarily have to respect that kind of string all that much. So it was a good challenge. And so this is the kind of thing that, oh boy, and there's that 4-6K that they really, I really wish that they would make that a little bit more powerful. It's clear that they wanted people to use that in order to ramp up the lethal hits that you can get if you get more lethal hits, but the 4-6K is just simply useless in my opinion at the moment. With the lack of range, which causes whiffs more often than not, to just how specific it needs to be in order for it to connect on a lethal hit, it's just really not that worth it. So I'm just trying to you see me using 2A a lot more in this kind of matchup because Dre is aware that he can't necessarily, not only can he not punish, but he also can't really press after he blocks some of my launchers from stance. So I just end up doing like a 2A, which will lose to backstep. So I have to be worried about backstep at that point. So you kind of see I'm doing 6-6A into a 2A because it's very different than any other matchup where I would have to deal with an I-12. Which this was a very, and you might be able to hear my reaction as well. That was a really good CE. So I'm trying to build up roses, but the amount of movement that Dre is throwing at me is keeping me from really kind of mounting any reasonable pressure, and I'm kind of going back and forth with Nightmare, which just means that inevitably I'm going to be losing because I have to be right like 5 to 6 times more often than he does. So AAA is going to be an I-12 punish, but again, he doesn't have something like that. Dre's just being very stubborn there. Trying to get me with the reverse flapjack for the wall. So he's able to get more damage off of like the backstep that he pulled out. And if I remember correctly, yeah, I have to get more used to like what the wall creates my combos out of. Like, my normal combos just don't work off of the wall like that. I screw up the GI, and yeah, that was about a little under half health that just completely evaporated off of a Nightmare Soul Charge. And so that's potentially going to be something that you're going to have to deal with. If you want to play Amy against Nightmare, you're going to have to deal with the fact that you could potentially be in the driver's seat for well over 90% of the game or the round, and you'll just lose. It can be very difficult, especially if you're trying to go back and forth with the opponent, because Nightmare's guard damage is inevitably going to catch you as well. If you get into a situation where the Nightmare player has 1 or 2 bars at the end on the last round, and your gauge is at least blinking yellow, whew, that's going to be a real tough. You're going to have to be, again, in the driver's seat 100% of the time. You have the tools to do it, but that doesn't mean it gets any easier. I like doing rows. Hey, thanks for the follow. Just kind of late, but I appreciate it. But yeah, now he's just kind of like, poking me out, which I'm kind of okay with, because it's not going to be that high damage. And you see me doing a lot of low parry kind of stuff. Dre is one of those guys who is now used to seeing low parry happen, especially at that range, on those wake-up situations, and he will get up and duck. So low parry A then comes into play. So this is kind of like the second level of Yomi. The first level being they've never seen low parry K before in their life, so you can just spam that until Kingdom Come, until they start just getting up and blocking it. Then you have low parry A, which frankly is even better to hit. So he ends up matching with my grab. I'm really surprised that high parry B ended up hitting. But yeah, you can tell, like, I've just canceled out of my 6-6A, which is 100% not what you're supposed to do, and I lose the whole round because of it. One simple mistake can completely nullify any of the stuff that you're doing. Puts himself at plus, but generally speaking, plus doesn't mean all that much to Amy against Nightmare. And you see me trying to like chase down his backdash with a tech crouch. Using Amy has a lot of forward movement tech crouching moves, which can really screw up any kind of potential zoning that Nightmare has. And 4AA just tends to do a lot of work here too if you're dealing with a Nightmare that's not necessarily all that successful at blocking it. A successful reversal edge, which really doesn't happen very often against Amy. But now I'm just worried that, again, I am 1 hit away from losing, and I still had to hit him twice. So finally I'm able to condition him enough with enough 4AAs to start ducking so I can go for 3A. And frankly, even if I'm wrong about that 3A, I'm relatively okay with it. And you saw how I used the 236A to tech under his zoning high. You can also use a lot of mid parries, as you saw there, to get rid of Nightmare stance pressure. Or just use tech crouches off of like 4AA and stuff. So I get kind of lucky there that reversal edge was supposed to be an AGA. But it's always relieving when you can get something like that. What? So here I'm using yet another tech crouch. That reversal edge really shouldn't have worked. High parry K is 100% safe to reversal edge. I really hope I'm not lying about this, but I'm feel very, very, very confident that that's completely safe to reversal edge. And Dre makes a very good read off of my back turn B plus K. I'm a little bit predictable. Basically, anytime I get an opportunity to use back turn B plus K, I use it. So you can tell that he's getting a little bit frustrated with the fact that I have momentum all the time. And even when I'm wrong about a mix-up, for the most part, if it's not going to be one of my unseeable lows, like 4AA or 2B plus K, then he'll block it like a high parry K or a high parry B, and it really doesn't matter, because it's still going to be safe. It's still going to be safe pressure. So you can kind of tell, like, both characters, they're so heavily to one side of the seesaw, so to speak, of speed and damage, that it becomes this very topsy-turvy kind of match where it's difficult to... You really have to lean to one side. When you're playing Amy against Nightmare, you can't let up on pressure virtually at all. You don't necessarily want to go for mix-ups, you want to go for pressure, because the pressure is the thing that Nightmare is going to have a tough time dealing with. And with the mix-ups, if you're dealing with a good Nightmare who's comfortable just guessing randomly on lows, you're going to lose out on the damage, because if he's right once, then it's going to change the entire game. So it's a very interesting matchup that hopefully I'll get a little bit more experience with as time goes on. on, and maybe I can do another video about Nightmare in the future to kind of show the evolution of what I think this matchup can be like. Not to mention, this also might be a matchup where in the future, once if I ever finally get comfortable with using White Roses, that White Roses will actually be something that I'll use a lot more often, because it'll tone down the damage differential. But let me know what you guys think, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time. All right, thanks very much.